Thanks. Morning.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Just confirming that the meeting is recording. Good morning. It is the April 11th, 2024 meeting of the New Mexico Oil Conservation Commission. Commissioner Bloom is participating remotely, and after conferring with Commission Counsel, confirmed that that's appropriate, consistent with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, as he is unavailable to participate in person. So I'm going to do a roll call. Commissioner Bloom?
Present.
Dr. Mpoma? Let the record reflect all commissioners of the New Mexico Oil Conservation Commission are present. The agenda was distributed in advance of the meeting. Do my fellow commissioners have any edits or changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Can I get a motion?
I so move.
Let the record reflect the April 11th, 2024 agenda was approved unanimously. Moving on to the next item of the agenda, we have minutes from the March 14th, 2024 meeting. My fellow commissioners, have they had a chance to review, and do they have any edits?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the minutes look good to me. No edits.
Dr. Mpoma?
Yeah, looks good to me. No recommended edits from my side.
Can I get a motion, please?
I so move.
I second.
Let the record reflect that the minutes from the March 14th, 2024 meeting were unanimously approved. Now moving on to the pending cases, we had a number of items that were simply carried over from the March 14th meeting. The first couple of items were coming in with scheduling and planning for actual adjudications on the record. And the last item was sort of a follow-up till we can finalize a commission order. So I'm going to start with case number 23580, application to amend commission rules to address perfluoroalkali and polyfluoroalkali substances and their use in oil and gas extraction. 1915-2, 1915-31, and 1915-32 NMAC. Are the parties in that matter present?
This is Jesse Tremaine for the Oil Conservation Division. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Michael Felderworth with Santa Fe Office of Holland and Hart for the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sid Davis, Wilder Guardians.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. This is Dina Bennett appearing virtually on behalf of EOG Resources.
And good morning, everyone. Sharon Shaheen appearing on behalf of Strata Production.
Good morning, everyone. I think when we met last, as everyone recalls, this matter was set for a rulemaking hearing the end of February, beginning of March. That was pulled down at the request of the parties. And so we're here today to discuss an updated schedule for the hearing and presentation of an updated scheduling order. Can someone for either I suppose I'll look to the petitioners or any of the other parties speak to where we are in terms of coming to a consensus on scheduling?
Morning, Chair, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Sid Davis, Wilder Guardians. We have spoken about September 30th, 7th, and we're available. Guardians is available for those weeks. I've spoken with Mr. Tremaine. He is available this week. Really, the reason that we have those 4 weeks is we'd like to get this done before the holidays. And then, of course, the additional constraint of scheduling in December to the legislative session. So we would ask the commission to consider those 4 weeks and then schedule it in one of those.
Any of the parties have comments on the schedule?
Mr. Chair, this is Jesse Tremaine, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The division is available any of those 4 weeks. We've been in discussion with all of the parties. And while the division's available, I'll defer to Mr. Felderworth on their availability. But our staff and witnesses are available, and it looks at this point like the November dates are probably better for all of the parties. But we can accommodate any of those 4 weeks.
Mr. Chair, Michael Felderwart for Namoga. The November weeks work for Namoga, the October weeks, the week of September 30th and then the week of October 7th, each have issues with them. So either one of those November weeks, though, were available.
And the first November week was just looking at calendars. Because I know one got emailed around, was it the 11th?
Correct, Mr. Chair. We've looked at November 11th through the 15th and November 18th through the 22nd.
And I would add, Mr. Chair, that when I looked at the schedule, I think that Thursday, the 14th, is a regular commission hearing.
Looking at reaching out to my fellow commissioners, because I think there were some concerns about the week of the 18th from at least Commissioner Bloom, but could folks do the week of November 11th?
Yeah, the week of November 11th works pretty well for me. 18th, probably not.
Commissioner Bloom? You're muted. It would start the 12th.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah. The week of the 11th works, but I just would flag that the 11th is Veterans Day. So.
How do the parties feel if we went the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th? Do we think we could present the case in 4 days?
Mr. Chair, I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I think based on what I'm seeing right now, I would be hopeful that we could, particularly with the structure that we have previously agreed upon, which is the filing of pre-filed written testimony, adoption of that, cross-examination. Again, maybe too hopefully optimistic, but I think there may be opportunity for at least areas of consensus, and then the parties to present any alternative proposals that they want. So 4 days seems adequate at this point in time.
Would the other parties concur?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, typically as well as guardians, I do some areas of consensus just based on recent thoughts. So maybe I'm also looking optimistic, but I do.
Mr. Feldwart,
Put me in the optimistic category.
let the record reflect Michael Feldwart's optimistic. Ms. Bennett?
Thank you. We defer to the other parties in terms of how long it will take, but the proposed November 12th through 15th works for EOG.
Ms. Sheehan? Sheen, sorry.
Apologize, I entered an appearance in the wrong case. I withdraw my appearance.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let it go. Based on the discussion here, I say we set for schedule. I'm proposing that we set for schedule the hearing in case number 23580 for beginning, just opening it up, November 12th, Tuesday, November 12th, and running through Friday, November 15th. This will supplant the normally scheduled meeting of the Oil Conservation currently set for, this would supplant the one currently set for November 14th. Can I get a motion to approve that scheduling?
I so move.
I second.
Let the record reflect, we've set case 23580 for hearing the week of November 11th, with the hearing beginning on November 12th. We'll work with the Commission Clerk and Commission Council to simply send around an updated scheduling order that reflects those new dates, unless the parties are requesting Well, I'll open up. Are the parties requesting changes to the otherwise approved scheduling order for the hearing that was supposed to be earlier this year?
Mr. Chair, this is Jesse Tremaine. I would recommend that we adopt a deadline for the submission of any revised petitions, because that's what's expected in this case, and that's not included in the previous scheduling order. So I'm happy to work with the parties to try to reach a consensus on the appropriate dates there. We also moved the pre-filing deadlines out to a longer period of time in advance of the hearing as would normally be scheduled. So I think it could be beneficial for the parties to discuss the exact timing of that and make a recommendation to the commission, unless the other parties disagree.
This is Michael Felderwort with Namoga. I agree. It's been a while since I looked at that schedule, and with the new hearing dates and how that relates to the prior weeks, I'd like to have an opportunity to take a look at it.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Also, my recollection is that it was maybe a half day. At the meeting. Public comment. Schedule it, maybe want to take a look at it. That maybe having public comment morning to testimony.
So based on the discussion, we will wait for the parties to submit an updated proposed order based on the one that was previously approved with changes here. So we'll continue case number 23580 to the next meeting of the Oil Conservation Division on May 9th. I would very much, in the interest of just transparency, since this is rulemaking and other components, have it resolved at that hearing so folks know the schedule and understand the participation. On the public comment point, during our rulemaking proceedings, there should be provisions for public comment each and every day that we hold a hearing. Any other discussion on case number 23580? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to case number 24277 and a whole bunch of others. Sorry, actually 24277, 24278, and 23755, which are the commission case numbers. And turn it over to the parties to, again, discuss scheduling, planning, timing needs for this otherwise complex matter.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Adam Rankin appearing in these cases on behalf of Goodnight Midstream Permian LLC.
Who else is here?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Dana Hardy with Hinkle Shaner on behalf of Empire New Mexico, and I believe Ms. Shaheen is also appearing.
And then Chris Moander on behalf of the Oil Conservation Division.
Ms. Shaheen?
Sharon Shaheen on behalf of Empire.
Ernest Alpady on behalf of Empire, New Mexico.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Good morning. Parties have been in discussions on a range of issues involving the scheduling of these matters, including potential hearing dates, sequencing, and other details around a proposed scheduling order. Late yesterday, Ms. Hardy circulated a proposed scheduling order to the division and myself, incorporating some of the concepts that we have discussed. There were some additional things in there that we hadn't, initially discussed. And so at this point, I haven't yet even had a chance to circulate it to the client on our end here, but there are a few things we still need to discuss. I think in concept, we have a framework, and we're looking at dates at the very end of August and September. I haven't yet gotten feedback from the division or Empire yet on those dates, so I don't know what works for them, but we're conceptually looking at a 1-week hearing. And in terms of scheduling, we are proposing, and I think we have agreement on this, but essentially 4 weeks in advance of the hearing, we would submit written direct testimony. And then 2 weeks in advance of the hearing, we would be submitting written rebuttal testimony. And that's sort of in terms of framework, that's sort of the most I can say in terms of agreement. We have some discussions around end of discovery deadlines. Mr. Tremaine and I discussed including some provisions around deposition dates, or at least a motion for requesting a deposition. So we have that in the schedule built in. We have discussed conceptually a time frame for end of discovery. We've talked about 45 days to 60 days in advance of the hearing date to end discovery. And so we need to have some discussions with the client and I think the division to confirm whether what we think is appropriate in terms of timeframes to have a close of discovery to make sure everybody has enough time to incorporate any additional information into their direct testimony. All that to say, Mr. Chair, we don't yet have a form of a proposed scheduling order, but I think that in large part, we should be able to, I expect that we should be able to reach agreement on any scheduling order. And it may be that we, have to leave some things out in order to reach agreement. But I think the parties will, with the commission's approval, have take some effort over the next few days to try to wrap up a proposed scheduling order. Now, with that, I'll turn it over to Empire and Division Counsel.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be helpful. I agree generally with what Mr. Rankin stated. We do need to agree on a hearing date. And I think to do that, it would help us to know when the commission would be able to hold this hearing. We have circulated dates, or Mr. Rankin circulated dates. There are a number of experts in this case for both sides, I expect, and the dates that are being discussed actually don't work for all of our witnesses. So we would really prefer an earlier date than dates at the end of August. And so I think it would be helpful for us to know when the commission is available to hold this hearing, and if there are dates earlier in August that would be acceptable.
And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, so one of the issues that I think I'm seeing from this is it looks like there's probably going to be some, I'm not going to necessarily call it aggressive, but there will be some probably thorough discovery that's going to go on. I appreciate Ms. Hardy's desire to get this done sooner, because usually I'm all about getting it done. One of the issues that the division is facing here is the fiscal year end for the federal government is, I believe it's the end of September, or not, might somewhere in the September month. And the problem we're going to have with that is I've got technical staff that will need to testify, but these are also technical folks who work on our federal programs. And the big issue at the end of the year is there tends to be a big rush of filings, reporting, et cetera, that ultimately you have to collect the data right up till the end. So the reports can't necessarily be finalized in a timely way. The dates that were bandied about amongst council were August 26th through the 30th, September 16th through the 20th, which would encompass the OCC regularly scheduled meeting on the 19th, and September 23rd through the 27th. Because of that, of those options, the best day or the best window is actually the 23rd through the 27th of September for the division. Otherwise, I will be in a position where I'm going to be tap dancing witnesses quite a bit. I recognize that's kicked out a bit further than some of the other parties may desire, but I also recognize, having litigated my share of cases, that with the discovery request that I expect to see, there will be motion practice on this. And I have a feeling that the commission will have a fair stack of those. Additionally, given what I'm expecting to see for experts, I also would not be surprised to see motions to strike experts or motions in limine, things like that, that aren't necessarily the normal part of what I'll call a traditional OCC case. So I would make the request to have this matter set at the end of September, the 23rd through the 27th, so I can preserve my witnesses and have them fully ready to go. Oh, and pardon me, I do agree though that there are these deadlines that are going to be based on the hearing date, and that's the way that it looks like this order is going to develop. If what we're going to do, I think, is meet next week potentially. I haven't secured confirmation from all council on that, but it looks like we probably need to have a gathering to just hammer these out if at all possible. So I think we should be able to get this stuff turned around fairly expeditiously, at least insofar as agreement.
And is it a consensus among the party that this matter will likely take a full week?
Mr. Chair, this is Adam Rankin. I believe the duration of the hearing may depend in part on the scope. We had discussed at the last status conference whether the hearing would include all of the cases currently referred to the commission, and there's 18 of them in total, or whether we would carve out only those cases within the Eunice Monument South unit and hear those initially, and then stay those cases relating to injection outside the unit boundary. My view is that hearing the issues on the cases inside the unit boundary are complex enough that I'm hopeful we can get that done in a week. But if we were to include the cases outside the unit boundary, I don't think we would get it done in a week. And on that point, Mr. Chair, I'll just say, one thing I neglected to mention in the opening was, I do think we were not going to reach agreement on that issue. We've discussed it, and it's just not a point that we can agree on. So one thing I think that we can do while we work through the scheduling is potentially set up a briefing schedule on that one issue. There are other issues out there that we're going to start briefing on the legal side in the next few weeks to month. But that one in particular is something that we can start dealing with while we work to hammer out a hearing schedule. On the August date, I had proposed that we have issues with August. Our experts are not available in that month. They have other commitments. And so the last week of August could potentially work. It's not great for me. I do think, the August timeframe is going to be very tight, just in terms of getting everything done. So my preference would be to have a timeframe in later September. Our client, however, is eager to proceed. Having this drag out does not benefit them either. So nevertheless, I think, if that August, rather September timeframe is available with the commission, that would be our preference.
Listening to the discussion, and I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners too, it sounds like this is a matter that will have some need for a motions hearing prior to it, some date in advance, and then a date for the hearing. I think to move things along, it would be good for us today in this discussion to set both of those dates so that we can put the parties on a pathway to resolving it. In terms of my own availability, and I will turn it over to my fellow commissioners, I heard potential discussions are swirling around the week of the 16th and the week of the 23rd. Personally, the week of the 16th would be better for my schedule, although I could make the week of the 23rd work. And I wanted to float just because I know there are a lot of complex issues, some questions about scopes and other things like that. Potentially setting a motions hearing in this, would like to get parties' reaction at the currently scheduled OCC meeting on July 11th. And before the parties respond, wanted to just get my fellow commissioners' reactions to that. Commissioner Bloom?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at my schedule here, the week of the 16th, not great. I could make it work. Cancel about 8 meetings. Week of the 23rd, much better. But nothing I can't move around on the week of the 16th.
Mr. Chair, so from my side, the week of 23rd will be much better for me. Yeah.
It sounds like we can make the week of the 23rd work for the hearing itself. What are parties' reactions to having a motion hearing in, well, either July or August?
Mr. Chair, I'll be in Denmark on July 11th, and I'm sure Mr. Felder would not like to have to take over my duties in this case. So my request would be, I think a motions hearing is fully appropriate. I am not convinced that that by August, there may be some additional matters that will need to be addressed in advance of the hearing, pre-hearing motions. But I think it may make sense to have at least an hearing on some of the dispositive issues in August, given the ranging issues that I think need to be addressed legally. So I think that an August hearing date for some of these matters would potentially make sense. I'm just thinking through the timing of it. I may request, however, that we look at a September date for a motions hearing. That would just allow the parties to have a better understanding of all the issues. I think there's still things that are they float to the surface over time, and I don't want to limit ourselves to a single dispositive hearing date. And if there are additional issues that come up, I would like to be able to have those briefed at a later time as well.
Mr. Chair, oh, sorry, may I respond?
Ms. Hardy, yeah.
Thank you. I think it's fine to have a motions hearing set in September, but I think that we are going to need a decision on the scope of the hearing much earlier than that, because we are talking about submitting our testimony and exhibits 4 weeks before the hearing date. So we're going to need to know what those should include. And I think that issue should be possible to address fairly expeditiously. I think the earlier we can have a hearing on that, regarding the scope, the better. And I would think that Goodnight would be able to submit motions on that, I would think, within the next couple of weeks. Mr. Rankin and I have discussed that issue and their position. I don't think they need a lot of discovery for that. I think their position is going to be that the cases outside the unit should be heard separately, and we disagree. So I think that should be heard and decided much sooner. I think the earlier the better, really. I would request a hearing on that issue possibly in May or June.
So that's where I was getting with my question about a July date, was it seems to me there are both potentially in this case looking at the record procedural questions and discovery questions that can probably be resolved a little closer to and maybe appropriately addressed closer to, but there are fundamental questions in terms of hearing scope, prep, other things like that that should be addressed sooner. Teeing off Ms. Hardy's suggestion, what about setting it at least on that discrete issue for the June Oil Conservation Commission hearing?
I think that's appropriate, Mr. Chair. I think getting that issue resolved as early as possible makes a lot of sense. And I think if we, with council, I propose that we come up with a briefing schedule so that it'll be, prepared for argument at that June regularly scheduled commission meeting.
And Mr. Chair and commissioners, just to clarify, we're talking here because this case has so many moving parts here, but just to clarify, is this going to be for just dispositive motions, or is the commission considering motions to compel, motions to strike? Because with all the potential motions filed here, I just want some clarity as to what exactly would be heard on this setting in the June OCC meeting.
So the proposal if I'm recapping the discussion and it's open for further discussion here, is that at the June Oil Conservation Commission hearing, we will hear motions dealing with the scope of the case. As either Mr. Rankin or Ms. Hardy mentioned, there are some 18 cases, if you count the division cases and cases filed originally with the commission at issue here. So in June, the purpose of that briefing and hearing would be to either say the whole shoot's moving forward or whatever, we'll hear arguments from the parties about what universe of cases should be moved so we can define the scope of the hearing that we're going to set for September for the week of September 23rd. I believe, Mr. Moander, there will be also a subsequent motions hearing closer to that will deal with some of the issues you discussed about kind of more specific procedural evidentiary type hearings closer to, but the purpose of the June hearing is to hear arguments from the party on the proper scope of the case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One other thing I would like to address, since we're on the topic of motions, and I do not want this construed as me throwing anybody under the bus or anything, but it appears that there's at least one motion hanging out there that was filed in March. It was from Empire. OCD wasn't served. I examined that, and so I'm going to just ask the parties to remember that we are in the case, and I would ask Empire if they would go ahead and serve that on us so we could evaluate and potentially respond.
Of course, we will do that. Apologies,
Ms.
Mr.
Hardy.
Moander.
Oh, it's quite all right, Ms. Hardy. That's why I haven't had a chance to talk to you directly, so I had to bring it up today, but thank you.
Other parties' thoughts on that sort of rough outline of a proposed schedule?
Mr. Chair, I think a June hearing addressing the scope of the cases, in other words, which cases should be included in the September hearing date is appropriate. And I think based on that hearing date, I would propose that I confer with Empire Council and Division Council on scheduling that would allow for the commission to have at least, would you like a week or 2 weeks or a week in advance to review the briefing? If you let us know what timeframe you would like, we'll work backwards from that date to coordinate a briefing schedule.
I think it would be most helpful to have the materials a week in advance of the hearing. All right, so seeing no further discussion either online or here, I'm going to move that we set cases 23580, 24277, and 23775. Those are the commission case numbers, not the division case numbers that are also implicated, for hearing as followed at a minimum at the June. My phone just locked. At the June 13th, currently scheduled June 13th meeting of the Oil Conservation Commission, there'll be a hearing on motions concerning the scope of this proceeding, to help focus the cases and issues to be set for hearing, and that the ultimate hearing in these cases will be held the week of September 23rd at a special commission meeting from Monday, September 23rd through Friday, September 27th, and we will update the OCC calendar accordingly. Can I get a second?
Mr. Chair, real quickly, one more time, what was the date for the motions hearing?
The current June 13th, that's the currently scheduled Oil Conservation Commission hearing date.
Okay, I had that meeting on the 20th. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, we may have, hold on, did we move it to the 20th? We may have moved it to the 20th. Let me pull it up.
Okay.
Because I know we set the schedule at the end of last year. Sorry. Yes, you are correct, Commissioner Bloom, because I think we moved it. Sorry, it would be set for the June 20th the regularly scheduled June 20th meeting of the Oil Conservation Commission.
Then I would second that.
I'm going to do a roll call. Commissioner Mpoma,
Approved.
Commissioner Bloom.
Approve.
Let the record reflect the motion was unanimously approved. And with those dates in mind, I would ask by the next meeting, parties endeavor I'll continue these cases to the next meeting and ask that the parties work to get a more flushed out procedural order for this matter in light of those dates.
Very good. Chair Fuge. We will get that done and we'll confer amongst ourselves and get a proposed scheduling order to the commission.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last item up is case number 23655. We had evidentiary presentations, witnesses, testimony at the prior commission hearing, and we heard evidence, and basically the commission staff circulated a draft order based on proposed findings submitted by the parties. I know we got some comments back from the petitioner, JITC, on those targeted comments, but did suggest that some edits, wanted to give other parties in the case an opportunity to discuss.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is Jesse Tremaine for the Oil Conservation Division. The division has reviewed the circulated proposal, and we anticipate providing predominantly minimal technical and language edits for clarity. There are a couple items that we highlighted that require internal discussion, and unfortunately, due to the timing of the circulation this week, the division's deputy director has been unavailable as he's out on personal business. And so I need a couple days in order to provide the final version of those comments. So by the middle of next week, I don't anticipate anything substantial. And I don't want to unnecessarily ask this to move to another meeting, but I do need final client approval before we submit those.
Do either of my fellow commissioners have any big picture comments on the draft orders or the comments we've received to date?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
I do not.
I would propose then, if the parties can come to a consensus on final revisions to it, and they can submit it to us as sort of consensus red lines and finalize, that the commission can circulate it for signature without further action. But I'm looking at Commissioner Council if we should take it up at the May meeting.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, you have the option to do either. You can delegate to the chair. The commission can delegate to the chair authority to sign a consensus order that does not depart significantly from what was presented previously, or you could bring it up at the next meeting.
Commissioners, but I leave it to you because I don't think that's an appropriate motion for me to make if you're comfortable delegating signing a consensus order to to them, assuming we get it from the parties.
Mr. Chair, I'd be more comfortable reviewing everything after we see what OCD is going to present, and then I guess voting at the next meeting and signing after that.
There we have it. We'll push the case to the May 9th hearing and ask the parties to circulate a consensus order if they can get to that point with all the changes in it. And I believe the clerk for the commission circulated a Word document, so the parties have a Word version that can be returned to the commission.
So, Mr. Chair, Michael Felderwart with the JITC, you'd like to see a consensus, I guess, red line?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yep. Mr. Felderwart, I for one, and I'll defer to let my other commissioners speak. I did not have any comments or concerns with the edits that you proposed on behalf of the JITC, but understand from Mr. Tremaine that there may be some minor refinements from OCD. So if we could get one sort of set of red lines back, we can have it presented as a final order for the commission, final action on at the next hearing.
Okay. Yeah. That's, we'll get that done.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions on that matter? There is no other business on the agenda. Well, I'm going to make a call. Is there any other business before the commission today?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, just as an FYI, there is oral argument tomorrow morning in the Atencio case. So if any of the commissioners or indeed anyone here wants the link to that oral argument, it will be held in a hybrid format in front of Judge Matthew Wilson here in the first. It begins at 9 o'clock. So if anyone wants the link, I'm happy to send it. Thanks.
And is that just a hearing on the state's motion to dismiss?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it is the hearing on all dispositive motions. That would include the motions. There's two motions that are dispositive. One for a motion for judgment on the pleadings by the legislature.
Okay.
And a motion to dismiss by the executive defendants, which would include our clients, this OCC, EIB, and the state as a whole.
Perfect. Seeing no other business, our next meeting is May 9th, 2024, and the April 11th, 2024 meeting of the Oil Conservation Commission is otherwise adjourned. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you all.